Overpowered ships. Who doesn't love a good overpowered ship? Sometimes they come out of the factory a little bit too spicy. Wargaming misses something in testing, or they don't have a big enough testing sample to really get a good feel for the ship, so they gotta be cooled down in subsequent patches. Sometimes it seems that ships are just meant to be overpowered and completely left alone for, well, their entire existence in the game. But either way, when you are discussing ships and their power levels, shall we say, there tends to be one nation that gets brought up a lot as being the overpowered nation, and that is, of course, the Soviets. Just take a peruse of the Discord or a YouTube comment section under a video about the Petropavlovsk, the Stalingrad, the Kremlin, the Slava, so forth and so on, and there'll be no end of the comments discussing the Soviet bias that does exist in this game. Except what's interesting about that is when you do get down to the nitty-gritty and look at the figures and actually play the ships, you'll understand that, the Soviet ships aren't really that great. I mean, sure, they have some bangers like the Petropavlovsk and the Stalingrad, but those ships tend to have some pretty big downsides. I mean, Petropavlovsk, you can't really hit much past 12 kilometers. And granted, if you do connect your shells past, 13, 14 kilometers, they'll still have the punching power as if you were, 10, 11 kilometers away. But again, try it out. And then if you do also play the Stalingrad, you'll see that she can in fact hit her targets at range, and those guns do very much hurt at range. But my god, if you catch that ship's side, they're going back to port. Or if you throw some HE in its face, it's going to burn down quite nicely, especially in the year of our Lord 2024. And Kremlin, Kremlin hasn't been like a major threat to anyone since like 2020, It really hasn't been that strong of a ship in a hot minute, but for some reason it always gets brought up with being this, destroyer of worlds, which, again, it's really not. Like, have you played a Kremlin recently, It's a big target, it's guns. I don't know what's up with the Kremlin's guns here recently, but it seems that the gimmick for it doesn't really work anymore, where the shells are supposed to be more accurate at closer range, but it really is throwing like half of its shells in the water around 12, 13 kilometers, when it really should be a hell of a lot more accurate than that. So yeah. Now, of course, they do have their exceptionally strong ships like the Slava, which, I pray for you if you are in a Slava sights, right? Because those guns do very much hurt, and they will connect at range. And the Cabros is kind of back in the saddle now that she has a bit of her super heal, but again, for the most part, the rest of their ships are fairly average, for the most part. And the Nakhimov, can't forget about the Nakhimov too, that ship is pretty cracked. But for the rest of the line, they're kind of chill. And what happened there with like the Kremlin, the Petropavlovsk in particular, and several ships this exact same scenario that I'm about to explain to you has happened. They were overcooked in testing, clips of them in testing got circulated to the community, and it was like, oh my god, look at this Petro deleting this Montana from, 15 kilometers away. Yeah, that was a little nuts, but they got nerfed in testing accordingly so, and then when they were released, they were also further nerfed into their current state, and pretty fast by comparison. If you look at how fast the Kremlin or the Petro got nerfed, and then compare it to how long it took for them to balance out the Conqueror, yeah, it was a much, much faster timetable than that situation. The whole Soviet bias thing got started because Lesta Studios, which is the original developer of Warships, was based out of St. Petersburg. They haven't been the developers for the game for some time now, and even under their development, again, those nerfs to the Kremlin, the Petropavlovsk were, again, under their roof, right? So, yeah, it was always a meme in my book, but if you want to know the truth about the matter, if you take a little gander elsewhere in the tech trees, there's another nation that is a little bit overdone at the moment, and their ships are some of the best and have been some of the best in the game for quite some time. And don't get me wrong, most nations tend to have, a ship or two that's a little bit overtuned. In particular, the larger tech trees, right? Obviously, the more ships you have in the game, the more premiums you have in the game, the more chances you have of having one or two ships that are a little bit much. But this nation doesn't have one or two. It's got quite a few that are a little overdone, shall we say. And that is none other than the baguette boys themselves, the French. And you might be thinking, Sealer, what are you crazy? The French? Yeah, no one suspects the French. I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is, but if you look at their ships, they've got some absolute bangers. And we see them as bangers because they're not Russian, right? So since they're not Russian, they're not overpowered. They're just excellent ships. But I mean, no, seriously, take a look at some of the stats for the French ships. The Bourgogne, highest average damage of the battleships and highest win rate, too, of the battleships. If you don't count, some of the newer battleships that have only been out for half a year, right? Because new ships, their stats are a little bit skewed because they have so few battles in them. When you start getting to the multiple hundreds of thousands of battles, and then that'll give you a more accurate purview of what the ship is like. But yeah, no, Bourgogne, the tier 10 French battleship, highest average damage and highest win rate out of the battleships in the game. All of them, premium, tech line, even with the Russians thrown in there. Believe it or not, Kremlin's not at the top of the tree like some people believe. It's the Bourgogne. Another good indicator, clan battles and COTS. Take a look at what ships are usually banned or restricted there. If you take a look at the dev blog, you can go in and search for the clan battles restrictions on the dev blog website. You can just scroll through and there's a very, very common pattern that you'll see in the restrictions. It's usually the Kleber and the Marceau getting either outright banned or restricted. And then you also look at like some of the COTS ship picks and the COTS bans for them, and guess what? Kleber and Marceau. And more recently, the Marseille. Don't get that confused with the Marceau. I don't know why they had to put two ships in the French line that are both at tier 10 with MAR as the first three letters. Yeah. Don't worry about that. But anyway, Marseille's been restricted, or again has been outright banned in competitive. Why? Because they are that good. I mean, what's really funny about the Kleber and kind of grinds my gears about the Kleber is that the Kleber is literally just old unnerfed Khabarovsk. Giant destroyer, destroyer leader, right? That's fast, agile, accelerates, decelerates on a dime, long-range guns with good ballistics. They're literally the same thing, but the Kleber had to get nerfed into the dirt not a few years ago, a while ago. But then the Khabarovsk got nerfed into the dirt a few years ago, a while ago, because it was apparently too good at doing that. And then the Kleber comes out a couple of years ago, and it's literally the same thing, but it has the 16-kilometer range with the nice shell ballistics, and then they give it the French damage saturation mechanic. Why? Because I guess they didn't want to give it a heal like the Khabarovsk. So yeah, but it's literally the same thing. Like when the Kleber came out, I was like, wait a second, this is my old Khabarovsk I used to love to play. But they won't unnerf Khabarovsk. I don't know. She did get the improved repair here recently, which was a nice little hug for Khabarovsk wargaming. But it's like, wait, what a second, this is literally the same thing. And Marceau, which is Kleber with faster firing but smaller guns. Again, as far as the ship goes, it's very similar to the gameplay style of the Khabarovsk, just more of a machine gunny Khabarovsk, right, with a slight different torpedo layout than the Kleber as well. So yeah, that happened, and then we get the Marseille line of the French battle cruisers, which are very, very good, and again, usually get restricted or banned from the clan battle seasons that they have been allowed in for the past, since their existence, right? Because of how good it is, having a cruiser with 300, what are they, 305s, 320s, that can run down your flank with reload boosters that can, just pop them and then delete your ship, with the French armor, which, French armor is a good thing and a bad thing, right? Sometimes you shoot them in the Citadel and they don't really care that, you should have just deleted half of their ship. Sometimes you shoot them in the rudder and they do get Citadel. It's a double-edged sword there. But yeah, having that ability is a little bit much and competitive and such, and it does get banned because of that. And if you even want to press into some more uncomfortable territory, also take a look at those bans and restrictions and such for clan battles, there's also a very, very common denominator there, and that is the Napoli. Now, since I did mention the most sacrosanct ship in the game to a lot of players, the Napoli, many of you probably are rushing to the comments section saying, well, Sealer, the Napoli is actually incredibly weak if you look at it from this perspective, or the Bergolan, it has 75,000 HP, it has, literally tier 9 ship up tier to tier 10, like, yeah. Okay, but would you do that? If we were talking about, like, the Moskva or the Stalingrad or the Kremlin, would you mention that they're incredibly easy to murder when you catch their sides, or that their guns really aren't that accurate despite having, the good ballistics, right? Would you, in many cases you'll find that players tend to not do that because of, again, Russian bias and how much that meme, to me, has, just absolutely molded most players' perspective of those ships. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, yeah, the Soviet ships need buffs out the wazoo. No, definitely not. Again, many of them were busted when they were released. Some of them, like the Nakhimov, are still quite cranked today in my mind. But what's bad for the game is bad for the game. Despite whatever nation they belong to, an overpowered American ship is bad for the game, just like an overpowered Russian ship is. Imbalance doesn't really matter whatever nation it's on. If something is busted, it's busted regardless of whatever, in my opinion. But for some players, that's apparently a bridge too far to cross, and people get strangely nationalistic about pixel ships in a PC game that's, again, meant to be just, a fun game where you get on, blow up some pixels, and then go on about your day, right? So that's just my little opinion piece for the day, if you guys want to call it that. Just let me know what you guys think about the whole OP ship thing down below, and how people are, again, strangely super nationalistic about a bunch of fake pixels on the screen. Again, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about this. Just a topic that I thought of today while sitting at my desk at work. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, share your opinions with me in the comments down below. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 56,000 subs, getting really close to that goal. I think we're under 200 subs away from that, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday, wonderful rest of the week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.